You know, patterns can be a good thing in video games, especially when they are nuanced and help the player understand the underlying details of gameplay. Take Don't Starve, for example, and you'll see a lot of basic patterns going on. Darkness is bad for you, you've got to eat every once in a while, you have to detect the right intervals in the enemy's attacks in order to counterattack, and the different biomes have specific and predictable wildlife. There are a lot of patterns of behavior and time in this game, but they are counterbalanced by the procedural map generation, the different characters the player can choose from, and even a completely customizable map option for sandbox mode. Okay, maybe Don't Starve is not the best example. Let's check something that looks more like the object of this video, Borderlands 2. It's a shoot-and-loot RPG that focuses heavily on combat, FPS mechanics and straightforward side quests. But it works well because the side quests usually contextualize new areas of the game world, new creatures or new ways to approach combat. Fallout 4 makes use of similar patterns. It has variations of the same weapons at different damage, fire rate, ammunition, etc. It mostly offers combat-based quests, and its enemies drop loot that is inexplicable but part of the shoot-and-loot experience. So how does Fallout 4 turn potentially good patterns into shortcomings? I absolutely hate forgetting things. I hate forgetting things, especially when I invest a lot of time in them. I hate reading a book only to forget certain events in the plot. I hate watching a film and forgetting the end of a character's arc. Forgetting things I read, watch or play is so frustrating. I enjoy playing memorable games with memorable qualities and memorable moments. That's not what Fallout 4 gave me. I'd like to say that Fallout 4 isn't a bad game per se. I could praise it for its combat mechanics, its physics, and especially its world design, which was greatly improved over the mess that was Fallout 3. There are many locations that have exciting things to do, see and interact with, beautiful landscapes and cityscapes, with amazing attention to detail in the external design of buildings and streets. The city of Boston feels alive and accessible. Its many alleys lead to new areas, its rooftops are often interconnected. Most places in the city seem explorable and feel like an organic and functional part of a whole. This is the most gorgeous world that we have ever seen in a Fallout game. Not the most nuanced one, but the most gorgeous one. The visuals are stunning, and as a consequence, ambience and mood are top-notch and difficult to forget. In that world, there are many, and I mean many, interiors. Corridors, lobbies, bunkers, and smaller rooms have designs that show up again and again. So you would expect those design patterns to enhance the potentials of the game, right? Actually, no. They mostly reinforce the sloppy work of level design and a waste of narrative potential. Some things are overused. Industrial platforms, collapsed ceilings that serve as ramps, broken walls, and loads of debris. It didn't take long for me to get sick and tired of those rusted metal textures in those smashed rooms. Because of such a limited amount of ideas, new locations sometimes look strangely familiar. Not to say unremarkable. The same goes for enemies, as most of them behave in a similar manner. Bloodbugs and stingwings, mirelurks and rad scorpions, dogs and mutant hounds, mirelurk hatchlings and rad roaches. Almost all of them attack in ways that force the player to respond in the same defensive manner. To forever backpedal. But I digress. Let's go back to the issue of locations. When you make an immersive open-world game, what you don't want is to make its locations feel like a waste of concept and level design, like I said before. Take the crater of Atom. It's located right where the bomb hit the Commonwealth during the opening of the game in 2077. 200 years later, you find a little community there, sort of like the Amish of nuclear energy. They are the Children of Atom, brought back from Fallout 3. You can walk about and talk to them, you can look at them, but not much else. There is even a dialogue option to ask for jobs or anything that needs to be done, and it's an option that leads nowhere. The crater of Atom seems like the perfect place for a detailed quest line. It's supposed to give the player new information about the old days and about how that scorched land is in the present. I mean, they are right in the middle of ground bloody zero. Think of the possibilities. Anyway, the protagonist approaches the leader of the place, a woman named Isolde, and you'd expect a plethora of appropriate questions about that grim and stormy landscape. Well, this is Isolde's best answer.
That is Atom's unique gift to us, the true believers. He has brought us here to this place, a place that cannot harm us, so that we may worship him, so that we may spread his word to others. That is our calling. To deliver Atom's message to a world that does not wish to hear it. To show Atom's power to all.
It's not what most would expect from this intriguing community, is it? If the best concept for such an important location that you can come up with is this bland embarrassment, you might as well do without it. The only time when the crater of Atom actually matters is when the player is looking for an intelligent super mutant called Virgil further into the main quest, and they tell you that he's located nearby, living in a cave. Big deal. Any NPC or even other narrative techniques like a nice investigative quest could have done the same thing with more sophistication. The problem is that Fallout 4 is filled with locations where you can only find enemies or loot, not so different from the Crater of Atom in terms of their shallow correlation to the story world.
Worry not, child. Atom will come for us all in time.
Speaking of quests, in the Borderlands series they are pretty simple and direct. Hunt down 20 shrux, head to hideout, catch up to Claptrap, or kill a dude. What's not to love about a game that is all about fast rhythm and no-nonsense exploration? A game that understands its mechanics and doesn't go for gimmicks that would be completely out of place for the way it was designed. In Fallout 4, it becomes harder and harder to suspend any sort of disbelief and tackle your own problems because there is a constant reminder that your problems are entangled in the sole survivor's problems. Another annoying pattern, as side quests easily distract the player from the apparently urgent main quest. The world conspires for you to find your fate, even if it involves getting people to abandon everything they've got and follow you without any convincing reason to demonstrate that any sort of kinship has been developed between you and them. I'm talking about companions. The player character is a constant source of major change in the lives of Wastelanders. No simple traveler, wanderer, lonesome bounty hunter. No, the player character is a glorified hero. And that is especially evident in the way the sole survivor easily attracts company. People have their own lives, jobs, carry out their own routines and have responsibilities of their own, sometimes major ones. All you need to do is talk to them and they'll follow you. Take Hancock, for example. He's the mayor of this settlement called Good Neighbor, where the rejects of the Commonwealth Society are supposedly welcome. He's got his own things going on, and loads of people put plenty of trust in him. Upon knowing about the feats of the sole survivor, he wants to have a talk. Basically, he's tired of feeling comfortable and wants to go back to a life full of action and gunfights. And who's better to serve as a company than that newcomer whose origin nobody knows about, but whom everybody seems to trust unconditionally? This experienced, jaded old ghoul is ready to throw it all up in order to accompany a stranger that comes from a hole in the ground. It's one of the most pathetic excuses for a companion ever to be developed in a game.
You can't leave, Hancock. We need you.
Hey, I'm always gonna be here in spirit, my man. Good neighbor.
Yeah, right. You're going to be here in spirit when you're carrying loads of rubbish that the player character takes. You're going to be here in spirit when you're out doing things that you're not necessarily interested in, but which you've got to do in order to stay in the company of this magnificent person of the wastes. And by the way, the situation is not that different with other companions.
We're together. That's all I care about. Everything else doesn't matter.
Fallout 4 has several other predictable patterns for the player. Ghouls waking up, gore bags, Radiant quests, kill everyone quests, and the dialogue system. In Fallout 4, Bethesda decided for some reason to keep multi-choice dialogue. I guess they felt compelled to fill all those 4 slots of dialogue every time, and that's a huge problem throughout. Want to go about a quest your own way? Well, screw you, you have to do it the way we designed. Want to visit the memory den and relive a memory of your own? Have a listen to what the owner has to say.
Memories involving other people are easiest. Recent events involving loved ones. Does anything come to mind? Well, this is a trial run. I want to see how you handle a clear memory. And in all my time doing this, nothing stands out like love and family.
What's this cheap, mellow cliche doing in a post-apocalyptic world where raiders kill people on the streets just because they spot them, and super mutants display dozens of bags filled with intestines and bones? Now, we give you the choice to suggest that you want something else, but the owner of the place, who knows absolutely nothing about this strange drifter, is just going to make a convenient remark about fond family memories. She doesn't even know if they have any family to begin with. It's such a blatant attempt to make the player follow the main quest without the slightest deviation from its linear organization, and it feels as if the entire game is some sort of Truman's Show-like experiment. The dialogue structure in a game like this is supposed to work in favor of the sense of involvement, not against it. Then there is the final confrontation with Kellogg, the man who kidnapped the player character's son and killed their spouse. He ends up being a mediocre villain who's past his prime and has nothing more to offer to the player.
Yes, you have. And believe it or not, I'm actually kind of sorry you wasted your time. In another life, you probably would have been a good father. But here, this terrible reality, you just don't get that chance.
I love the fact that the game tells it like it is. If you're controlling the sole survivor, the sort of person you want to be doesn't matter that much in the game, and then you get stuck with 4 dialogue options that lead to the same outcome: more combat. And no, there isn't a way to avoid this particular fight. Kellogg simply has to die. Will I forget Fallout 4? Well, not the game itself, but definitely parts of it that should have been important, considering that it still tries to be an open-world RPG, even though it's so action-orientated. Ultimately, Fallout 4 is a game about patterns, and not in positive ways. A game in which you do the same things over and over again. You fight the same types of enemies, collect the same resources, enter the same buildings with similar layouts, meet characters with the same responses to the same dialogue options, do the same side quests over and over, and craft similar items with the same resources that you've collected. I can't seem to recall most of the good moments in the game, yet the bad things are the things that I can recall clearly. In Fallout 4, gameplay and level design patterns catch the player's attention in a way that everything else becomes unremarkable. There are things about this game that I could only remember when making this video, and there are things, all of them bad, that I wish I could forget. Hey guys, George here. Thank you so much for watching this video. This was a bit different from what I usually make, but it was fun making it. Anyway, if you want to learn more about actual game development patterns, look for the book Game Programming Patterns by Robert Nystrom. It's an excellent read even for people who know nothing about programming like me, and it goes beyond the more conceptual and narrative patterns that I talked about in the video, which were obviously analyzed from a subjective standpoint. Again, thank you so much, and if you liked this, please subscribe, click on the like button, and leave a comment with your thoughts. See you next time.